Auto Workshop, and this is our first part to a four-part series on our secretary desk set. What are we doing today, Dad?
Well, we got those 4 series, but we got 3 parts to build, and the table's the first thing.
Okay.
Start at the foundation. What I'm going to do, Rick, is we've got legs here, and they're tapered, and I got to taper them,
right.
And they tie into the rails with dovetails.
Right.
And then what, you're going to put them bead on?
I'm going to bead it, and I got a slick way of tying the top to the frame.
I'm going to put this nice mold on the top, and you round the legs.
Right on.
I'm ready to go with the tapering.
Okay, let you go.
What I want to start off with first here, and I'll just raise it up, let you have a look in here. Got quite a long cutting bit in here. When I say long cutting, the surface area of it's quite long because the legs are 1.5 inches thick. It's just a straight cutter, got 2 carbide tips, and we got a guide in it. Now, I built up a jig in here to do that with, and I'm going to take this out. And the leg itself has got taper on the one side, and I've got a line here. You can see kind of what my pattern was. But I need a straight part down here first and then the taper. And when you taper things down, we're tapering down the grain, so it shouldn't tear at all because the grain is running out and you're running with down it, so it should be good in it. Now the jig itself is made out of some Baltic birch and a couple of hold downs, and all it does is simply follow that guide. And when I do it, you won't be able to see the guide because it's underneath the work. And I've left a little tab here to start with. Otherwise, you'd go by, get something to catch to. Now, when we put the piece in place like that, got a little stop at the back, put your hold downs down and lock them into place. Now, what we need to do is raise that cutter up so it comes right above the top here, so it clears the cutter. Don't feed too fast. Give it time to cut. And when you rough bandsaw these out, make sure that you don't take too much at a time in a bite. You can make the guide smaller or bigger. You can take a little at a time if you like, whatever. I've set this up so the diameter of the guide just depends on the thickness of the cut you want to take. Let's see if we can get some power in here, and we'll start with the first one. Got a little bit of a bend in here, needs to be straightened out. We'll lock it in, and we got power. Okay, take that one out. Boy, I should show you that. There's some real quarter cut there. Look at the nice grain of that oak. Now we'll take the next one, lock it in, same procedure.
After cutting the tapers, Dad changed to a 1-inch guide, a 1/2-inch dovetail bit, set the height to 3/8 of an inch, and started cutting the pins in the rails.
Now, got those, I'm going to hand those to Rick so he can go to work. Now the next operation is the legs. So we get rid of the fence in here, get rid of some dirt, my little brush in here a little bit, clean that off. Above all, don't change the height of the bit. You have to change the height of the bit, you have to do all the pieces. What we're going to use is, being this goes any direction, we're going to use it as a fence in here. And the first operation, and I'm going to unplug this, is we've got to get these legs, and they're in pairs. So we're going to have to set this up in the center of the bit, and we've got a little mark on here, and we'll put a clamp down on the fixture itself to the table so it acts as a fence. And the next thing we have to figure out is how deep do we want to go. And we're going to run that in here, and that deep, or however deep those rails were. And I got a little mark on here, and I'll just transfer it up so I can see it. And we'll put that about the center of the bit. Now we need some kind of a stop. And the stop here is like that. Look at the stop. We'll have a quick look at it. I took a block of wood here, and I drilled and put a dowel in it. The reason for the round stick is when I used the square block, the cuttings came up and stopped it from going, and you're always cleaning them. By a round stick, they could hopefully work away from it. So we'll set that block like that. That's my depth in it. And we get a clamp in here and see if we can just clamp that down. I got a little mark here that I got for the depth, so I know where I'm going with it. And we'll tighten that down. Do a couple like this, and then we'll do the other one. And remember what we're doing here. On this side, we're doing the straight side, and this side, we're doing the tapered side, but we got to get it in a different location. So we'll set this up in it, and I'm pretty close to what I want. We didn't change the height of the bits, so we'll just run them. Okay, now we got a pair of those, and they pair up. Now what we got to do is get that side. Now we got to do the opposite side, and this time we got to move out. So I'm going to take and move this fence out. So we'll take the clamp off here, and we'll do the center ones because they center up. I don't think we'll even have to move our stop maybe until we get the block into place here. And a little bit of debris there that sets up, and we'll set that about like that. And I'll leave the clamp upside here so I can see what I'm doing. We're going to come in there just a little long on it. I'll just come back here just a bit. Leaves a little margin for that to come to. Now I'll go up and I'll stop to the block again. This time my debris did build up some, but because of this slot in here, it'll probably help a little. We got a place to put it. Remember, we haven't got much of a flat surface to work on, so be careful what you're doing here. Now, let me just show you where the pairing came. There's the pair now. See, we got them two paired up inside of it. Now we got to do is come down on the inside, but it's on the short taper, so we have to center it. So we'll loosen the clamp again, and we'll go back here. And let's see which one I had. I got a mark here, I think, on one of these, a center mark. What we want to do is be centered, and what happens in it is when we put that rail on it, that little sample here, then that rail will center on this piece and leave you a little margin on it. That's the idea of it. Now, we'll just take and move that fence ahead. A little bit more in here. I'm going to rotate that cutter. Usually those bits come with a center on them, so you have no problem trying to find it. We'll lock it down. We'll put that in. And let's see here. That looks great. Now remember, it's the flat side that's down, and they're all the same on this one. This one doesn't matter because we're on the center of the piece. Let's start it up. Now, if we can get a pair here, we'll just have a look at these. We got these all set up inside of here, and we'll just take and hand those over to Rick here and let him go to work. Now, I'm going to take this system down because we got the top and we have to put a decorative mold on it. So we need to unplug the router and change the cutter. The cutter that I'm going to use this time is a classical bit. I'll tip that up. Don't forget to unplug your router. People say, well, you can put an external switch on it, but I'd sooner know where the plug is when I get in here and change cutters. Pop that together, take the cutter back out, And we'll go over here and have a look at this cutter. Got a bearing on the side, but I'm going to run to a fence. It's got a decorative in it. What do we have in here? We've got a cove. We had a shoulder, square shoulder here, and then we have a roundover portion of it. We're going to stick that in here, but I've got to get the guide out first. So we'll get rid of the guide and wring that off. And then we'll put this cutter in. Easier to get it through that direction. Pop it down in here. Now, maybe we can just tip that around and you can have a look as when I bring this out for height. It's easier to set the height up here. Rick always does this, and I think it's a great idea. You can see down your plate as to the height. What I'd like to do is get a square shoulder on that cutter down in here. And if you look on side of it here, and I might be able to turn that, right in there you can see the shoulders above it. So we're going to get a little line. If you don't, you're obligated to get that fine circle in it. That's very difficult to do, and then you end up trying to sand it out. So now we'll lock that up there and lock it up real snug. We'll drop it into place, and we'll go to a fence. Now the neat thing about the fence in here, and I'm not sure if I used that fence with it before, so what we're going to do is just clamp one end out here. We'll clamp one end, and then I'll show you what we're going to do with that. Get it set up in here, just down, and just snug it in there. Keep that tight, swing this away. What happens is that we should be able to do is cut a pattern right in the end of that. We're going to cut a little pattern. I'm going to just sneak a little more in here. And here's how you do that. You got one end fastened snug in it. Now we're going to plug the router in. We're going to turn that on and bring the fence into it, let it cut its own path. What it'll do is leave a profile in the fence, and it'll act as a chip breaker. I didn't get much of a cut because I had used it there for that kind of thing before, you see. Now, just going to snug that just a little in here. A lot of thread on that thing I had open for that stop. When we run this, we've got the cutter on the down side here. So this, you pick a face side, whichever side is your top, that's the best in it. And this one, we've got a few little knots in the bottom side of it. So we'll put this face side up. I'm going to get rid of that fence because I'm going to dig in here. Now, let's just look at this. We got the end grain. Always do the end grain first because any chip out on the end, then we'll go down the side, go down that end and back up the side again, and that'll leave you a clean cut. So we're plugged in, we're started.
Well, first thing I think we're going to do is drill the divots so we can hold the tabletop onto the rails. We've got a V-groove bit in place here. The next step we need to do is bring in some material. So we'll bring the material over in place here. And what we've done is sort of marked where we want to put the groove. This is the short rail, so we're only going to put one in this. This is the long rail, and here we're putting two in. And we put them at about 6 inches from the edge. So we'll lay this in place here now, and let's just slide this underneath. And we've positioned the fence in the right position where it's going to give us so we can put that screw in place. So all we're going to do is line up now till we get to the line. And you could be close. It doesn't have to be right on because all it is a screw that's in the back that's holding the top on in place. And anyways, the next step is to zero out the bit. We've done that now. Let's set it up so we know how deep we're going to go. So we'll run it up. And lock it down in place. Got it tight. We're just using the bar to give us 3/8. So now we've got it all set. I'll move these pieces over to the edge here so we don't drop them. Get my hearing protection on. And my glasses. And now that everything is set up, we're going to release the lock to run the router up. And let's go and do some drilling here. We'll plug it in and start the router. there's the divot. Now what we do is we got a flat spot to move the drill hole through this and then mount the tabletop to the rails. So let's finish those pieces now. Take the next one, line it up, slide it into place, and right about there. I finished the divots, removed the fixture, and started setting up to route the decorative mold on the face side of the rails. What I'm looking for is to have a little bit of a line on the bottom here. Now, it's all depending on what you want to look at. Another nice look is to have no line on that, but just have the edge. So you're pretty much at that time looking to decide what you want to do with your rails. So slide this over in place. Let's get the fence. Position it. Make sure that the bearing's not giving us a hard time. So we'll clamp the outfeed side first, and we'll move it over here so you can see it a little better. Clamp down the outfeed. It in place. Make sure that we got the bearing isolated. And clamp down this side. And tighten it in place. Now, let's take a look at that. That looks pretty good for me. Now, we've got to remember which side that we're going to grout this. Remember, if we put the divots on the top, that's where the fence is, or the top is coming to. So we want to put the molded on the X side and down. So maybe we should sort those pieces now. So we'll make sure that we've got all the pieces facing the right direction. We're all set that way. Let's check to see how our power is. Plug it in, and let's cut our pieces. There's the shape and the mold. Maybe I'll turn it up so you can see it a little better on the end. Gives us the profile. And if you want, I preferred the little line on the bottom. If you prefer not to have the line, then you just move the bit down so it's just flush to the edge. Let's finish the cuts. Now that I've completed all the cuts on the pieces of the rails, the next thing is to set up the 1/8 inch bit, and all I'm going to do with that is mold the edges of the legs. Dad, have you got the legs done? Ah, great, thanks. I'll set those here for now. And fence down, change the bit. And the bit I'm going to put in here now is going to be a 1/8 round over, because we just want the bottom rounded over on, or the edges all rounded over on the all four of the legs. So we're going to take out the draw line bit now. The bit I've got here is just a 1/8 round over, so it's very small round over on it. We'll use that, plug that in, tighten it down. And I'm going to set it up so there's no line on it this time. So if we just get it exactly where we're looking for, That's right on to the full profile of the edge, because we're just rounding the edge. I don't want to put any lines on this. So we'll lock it down in place, and put the pin on this side here. Now, let's bring one of the pieces over here, and let's see what it looks like. And we'll plug it in, and we'll start cutting. See, the edge is just nicely rounded over. You don't want to have a square, sharp edge. That's all we're doing, is just knocking the edge off.
Now it's time for Tips from the Workshop, Viewer Mail, and Tricks of the Trade on router bits, tips, and wood chips.
Tip this time is a way to cut the haunch so that the pieces fit together. Now the trick is we've gone and routed out the dovetails on this side, and we need to knock out this haunch so it fits. Here's one that we've got finished, and it just slides in place so that we can cover up the groove on the bottom. That's the purpose of this. All right, so to set it up, what we've done is we've put a large cutter, 3/4 inch. This one here is 1 inch in diameter. And what we want to do is set the height up so it's got the height of the notch that we're going to cut. Set the fence up so we've got a large side here, and just run it in till it catches the edge. So let's do that. Get our hearing protection on, plug it in, and we'll cut it. And there's a quick way to cut the haunch perfect every time. Right,
I got the top
here
molded. Oh, you brought a lot of parts.
So I'm going to give you these two,
Okay.
and then one of
Can I have
these.
one of those too?
I'm going to put the long ones here in the middle.
Pretty
See if we can
important
get
how
the
we
side
put
ones.
these, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to put it right.
Gotta have those nice molds you put on there on the outside edge. Man, I got
You should
those.
dry fit before you.
Wouldn't that be a good idea?
Don't break them now.
Don't break them, eh?
No.
Okay.
Get this one down here on the side.
Put
Maybe I
it
should
upside
do it
down
this way.
maybe, eh?
That works better.
Now,
Ooh.
turn it up. Oh, oh. Let me hold it.
Okay, you've got
I
that.
got the two of them.
Let's see if we can get this first one here. That one's going to come in.
Lots of pieces to fit here.
Yeah.
I'll go down that one a little bit.
We're not going to do what the guy, what did he do? Dry fit his door once. And when he dry fit the door, he forgot to glue it because he had to go get the phone call.
Yes.
And then
And he
one day he was
varnished it.
showing his friends how this door worked, and it fell apart.
Yeah, it lasted quite a while though.
Yeah.
It was nice of him to tell us. He said he was embarrassed.
We're not saying names, though, right?
No, we won't do that.
All right.
You got that? So
I've
we'll
got
pull
it.
off
So you've got the
bench?
top to fit.
Let me just take this nice molded top we got.
Right.
And we got it.
We'll set it up here, and you get that mounted
And centered where it belongs.
where it belongs. We've got the first part of the secretary desk. Welcome back to the Router Workshop. This is our second part to our secretary desk. And today, Dad, what are we doing?
Well, to start with, before we open up the lid here, we've got it all laminated up, and then we put a piece here to give it some strength.
Right.
And we got a little, but that's tongue and groove, so we got to do that. Also on there, what I got to start with, I'm going to do the casework, but I've got a little slot to hold these so they only come so far.
Right. And that
then
holds the desk, Tara.
That's going to hold that up.
Right. And then we're going to work on the inside. I've got a frame here that I'm going to work with to start with, and I'm all set up to do that.
Yeah. And all that framework's going to do is hold this top on,
Right
but
on.
I'll do the mold around the outside edge of it.
Okay.
And then you can do the rest.
All right. All right. I think the first operation is going to be to make the frame to hold the desktop down. And to start with, we've got a 1/4 inch slot cutter in place, and we have the two side pieces here, and we have the ends piece. So I'm going to start by cutting the two side pieces, and then we'll bring over the ends and cut them as well. So we'll make sure we got our safety glasses on and our ear protection. Let's plug it in and make the cuts. Now we have a groove on this side here, and we have one in here. The next step is to make the grooves on the ends that are going to tie into that. So let's bring over the pieces here we've got to cut the grooves. Now both of them have already been cut already, so what we've done is we've clamped it together to run both of them at the same time. That way we will have a little wider piece to go across the slot cutter opening. All right, I'm going to take off the one shoe here so that I can use the push stick as well. So we'll start it up and let's cut the two ends. Now let's take the clamp off and let's test the pieces to see how they fit. I'll get the two spline pieces we need, and let's set the push stick away. We're going to lay down the pieces in place here. Bring one of the sticks out. And what we've got is the spline going down through the two ends, through this piece here, if I can get it right. And all we need to do now is mount it, put the glue in place. Let's see what Dad's doing.
Now, I got the dadoes cut. Now we've got on the top side here, we need a rabbet for that frame that Rick's making to fit into, and we also need one at the bottom. So we're going to move our fence over. What I've got in there is a 3/4 inch for the 3/4 inch plywood, and the plywood that we're using here is a veneer core, and it's got oak on one side and ash on the other. So now we'll just set that up so that bit is just flush with that, and pop that in there like that, and I think we're all set to go. Now, there's the two sides of the desk part. What we need to do is pass them over to Rick because he's going to make use for the back.
Thanks. This operation here is where we have to put the back into the front. So it's got to have a little bit of a tricky joint on here. And what it is it's got a 45 in the 1/4 inch area where the back goes, and sort of a rabbet in the back as well. The bit we're using is a 45-degree bit, and it's set up so that it's got a 1/2 inch height. Okay, so here's the 1/2 inch to the change where the 45 goes, and then that 45 is taken off the last part of it, and that's where the 1/4 inch back is going to tie into that. So our first cut is to cut into the 3/4 inch thick materials. So we set the height of the bit to be 1/2 inch. We set the distance away from the cutter to be exactly 1/4 inch, whatever the back is, and let's cut them. Let's see if you can see what the router has done. We've cut it on a feather edge. We've got the 1/4 inch edge piece here now. Now when we make the back, we want to take that 1/4 inch feathered edge off it as well. So we have to set up the cutter, and I'll just show you that here in a minute. So we'll set these aside. And let's take a quick look here at the bit now. Now when I'm setting down the height here, we've put a notch in the piece to keep the plywood from riding up. And to do this, we just want to drop the cutter down so that it matches right where that notch is. And that's about where it is right there. Now, we want to cut these edge pieces. What we're going to do is, there's a notch in the fence where the plywood fits right underneath it, And that's going to keep it down while it makes the cut, because the V-cut wants to always lift it up. If we've got a notch in the fence, it's going to hold it straight and down to the table while we make the cuts. Let's cut it.
Okay, now what I've got here is these two slots, and what's going to go in there is a couple of dividers. And these two dividers are going to sit in like that. But in those dividers I need a slot, and the reason for the slot is that we got these pullouts, and the pullout slides in here. And if you look at this, you'll see that I'm wider than what it should be, what it looks like. But remember those, I just cut the dadoes in the sides, they got to fit in, and that allows for these. Well, we don't want them to pull right out. So what we're going to do here is cut a little groove in it, and then we can put a screw in there, and that'll keep that track so you can only pull it so far. So that'll be the next operation in it. So let me set these pieces down here, and I'm going to have to unplug and set up. And this time I'm going to use, and it's kind of an arbitrary thing for that screw, but I'm going to use a 3/8 bit. And I do have it unplugged. Take the wrenches here and we'll change the cutter. I'm going to put a 3/8 spiral bit in. And we should get that bit out. Pop it in here. 3/8. Chuck it up. And seeing that I got a 3/8 bit and lots of hole there to work with, I think what I'll do is we'll put a bushing in that. Put the insert in from the top, ring that at the bottom, tighten it down there. Nice brass fittings in it. Now, what we want to do in it is that bit's got to come right through. So we got to be the thickness of the material a little better in it. And we'll pop that in there about like that and lock it up. And now we'll put it down in here. Now remember, the router bit is turning this direction, so we'll keep that in mind when we get this set. And I'll put a fence up on this side in here. And we'll see if we can get that set up centered. I got a little center mark on here, so we'll put that center mark over the bit. And again, this isn't that important because you're going to place the screw in it anyway. And where are we going to start? I'm going to start down in here. And again, this isn't important because you're going to put the screw inside of it. But what I'm going to do, I've got a kind of a line in this piece in here, and let me just transfer that for a second. We'll transfer that line along the edge in here. And we'll make both ends, I guess, as close as we can the same. We got that. We'll put it on this edge, and then I can see a little better. That should work just right about the width of it. Could put a piece of tape in there, but that's going to mark. That's where I'm going to start. So now we're going to put the other one in it, same distance. And we'll end up about there, too. See, the screw's going to look after it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to put this inside of it, and you look at that and you say, is that safe to do? Yes, it is, because this bit is there. There is no kickback straight back. In a saw situation, you should have a stop block, but on this one, all we need to do is just drop that down. I'll run up to the line and stop. And I've got marks on this piece in here, and I'm going to need some marks on this one also. So I got my marks inside, and let me just take a little block of wood in here. That'll work for me. And transfer that mark up like that. Turn that around. Good enough. Okay. We need some power. Plug it in, start it up. Just let that bit run down so that you pick it up smooth there, and we'll let it stop. Shake that out. There's your slot for your travel for your screw. Now we'll brush that off so we can get right down tight on it. Don't kick or pull on it. Now that didn't take too long. Okay. Now, see, we got those two done. I'll set them aside. Take this down again. Get a chance to make lots of bit changes here. Now what we're going to do is work on that lid. And I've got to make a tongue and a groove in it, so I'll pop that up inside. Put that down. And of course we won't forget to unplug the router. Wrench in here. And we need to take this out of the way. Get rid of the insert. I'm going to cut the slot in the main part of the lid first. Now, this isn't going to go through here, so we're going to have to load it from the top side. And down in here like that. And wrench inside. Okay, what we're going to do is pick a face side on that. And we'll probably pick 1/4 inch. And I'm going to put this 1/4 inch piece just in here, this brass. And we'll run that up like that, tie it down. That'll be our face side. The other side doesn't matter. As long as we use the face on all, and they're all the same width, they'll come out of there. And we'll talk about that when I cut the tongue to fit the groove here in just a minute. Now, got to go back to the fence. And again, we're going to have to make a slot for that. Oh, well, that's good too. Now we got that. We plug it in. And the other clamp in here. Remember, I got one side clamped down, bit's running in it. Make myself just a little more clearance, so I'll come this way with it, lock it down. Now we got to get this lid piece over here and have a look. We're going to pick a face side of it, and we'll see which one we like the best. And it looks like this is our good side, so we'll turn that down. And just through the end grain in here, we're going to run this groove through it. Okay. If I could hold that up here where you can have a peek what I did in it. See the little chip out in here? I'm not concerned about that because it's about a 1/4 inch wider than we need it. So once we get the pieces glued on, then we can trim it off. And I'm going to make a groove now on the end of this piece to go down in there. And that'll give it strength, keep it from warping. Now, we'll set that aside here for a minute and take this system down. And again, we'll unplug the router. That off, and let's see what we're going to do here. That down inside. Now we got a rabbeting bit in here. Before I set that up, I'll just show you what I've got with it. There's the rabbeting bit. Well, when we put that groove in it, I had it start a 1/4 inch away. So I would think that we would be on the same thing, face down, if we were in that 1/4 inch by in there. But the other side might be a little thicker, so we might not be able to center it on that way with it. The other thing I could have done was turn the stick over and the panel and did it again, and then it would center also. But this is fine. We got face sides. We'll set up twice in here, I think, and get that just right where we want. And again, we need to use the fence and a clamp on the far end. And that way, maybe you can see just a little better. And again, we probably need a little clearance there. I'll just hand run that by. No, we're okay. We'll use this in it. We'll just kind of isolate that bearing. And I guess that's pretty close. So we're right on. Locked in place. Just touching that bearing, so we'll just tap that over a little bit. There we go. Now, I'm going to pick a face side of these two. These are our two pieces that go on the end there. And that looks like a good side to me. And I'll pick that one. So now we're going down with the X down. Face side down, plugged in, power. Now, here's the face side. If you notice on here and have a look, this is a little thicker in it, so I'm going to have to raise that bit up. But what I've got in here, I've got that come out, so that's coming just right flush with it. So now the next piece inside of it, when I put that in, I'm going to have to come down a little bit on that. So this will just be a little bit of setup for it. I'm just going to brush that down here. Yeah, I'll find a spot here, and then I'll show you what I got when I get done looking at it. Oh, I think I got pretty close. Pretty close. One thing you can do with your router, you sure can make a lot of dirt. Well, let's try that. Okay, what we're going to do now, and I got the face side down, so we'll put the face side down in here, and it'll come out exactly flush on the edges. When we put that in there, we're going to glue it, and we can't do what we showed on the show with the lid in it. We got a little 1/8 inch groove in here. One of the reasons for it is to depart with that in it, so we're going to run that in there after it's glued. So we got those now. Next operation, another bit change. Unplug the router. Rick's making a framework for that top, and the finished top's got to sit on it. So we've got to do here a little bit of a nice, made that table, if you got to see that show. We put a classical bit around it, cutter. So we're going to do that again in here just to match the table. We'll take these two together, pop that out. Nice when you can change your router bit on the top side and see what's going on. There's the classical bit. And again, when we set this up in here, we're going to leave a little shoulder. We got a part in the bit here, it's going to make a round over, square shoulder, and then we're going to make a cove in it. If you get that squareness in it, then it's easier than trying to sand something and get it to fit. You should mold it to fit, people. Don't sand things to fit. Now, let's see if we can isolate the bearing here. I got clearance. Take this out of here. About there, I guess. Not, we got our fine adjusting tool here, so we can tap that over. No, I'm not touching the bearing. Man, should be building something really important today, shouldn't I? It's just right on. I guess we're ready to go. We plugged it in. Here's the top. And again, we got to pick some side in here, see which one is the best. This one looks like it. I'll X on it. Now remember, when we do things like this, we do the end grain first, we go with the grain, cross the grain, and with the grain. And that's what I'm going to run here.
it's time for Tips from the Workshop, Viewer Mail, and Tricks of the Trade on Router Bits, Tips, and Wood Chips.
Tip this time, when using a 45-degree bit and quarter-inch plywood, it has a tendency to ride up on it so that you don't get a clean cut. So to set that up, what we've done is we've put a notch in the fence so that the plywood will have something support while it's going by the cutter.
I started without
your pieces there. We've got to be careful here on the back. We've got those 45 edges. So
don't drop them on the floor.
nope.
That's the one I can have.
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll just dry fit these pieces together.
Okay. Started anyway.
Now I could just use this to.
Oh.
You get that?
Want the hammer?
Just to tap. But again, we got to be careful about
Don't
this.
tap the 45. Is that the idea?
Well, sure take the edge off it, won't it?
Okay. Let me just do the same at this end here, just a little bit. That's going to be great.
All right. Now the last
There's
one
your
here,
frame.
we'll get the frame in place. We got it on a 45, so
Well, on that
place
angle
that in
there
place.
anyway. Are you going to be able to hold them kind of together?
Yeah.
Maybe
Now
I could just lay my
one-
top on there, eh?
where's that piece there? We want to show them how this goes in too.
Want me to slide that over to you?
Now what we want to do is slide these in place where you made those grooves, right?
Yeah.
Get it to the distance that you want.
Can we see that groove? Do you think that's where that screw's got
That
to go?
screw and mark it in there. And so when you pull it out, it'll stop at the screw.
Don't pull it right out. Then you got lots. Now wait a minute. I'm going to put the top on. Okay.
Okay, you're putting the top on.
Yeah. I put it on. See, and I molded it. If everything falls down, it didn't work very good.
The number 3 part for our secretary desk. And what are we going to do today, Dad?
Today are the drawers and the cubby holes. So this is the big drawer I'm going to start with.
Right.
And then if we pull these out, we can
Lay it down.
lay the lid down
Right.
and get inside. And I got 2 little drawers inside of here.
And I'm doing the cubby holes, which is
Yep.
to shape the size, round over the edges, and put the grooves and channels in. I'm
bet.
all set over here, so I'll get started. There's the first dadoes for the cubby holes. The drawers are going in this place, and the uprights here, and I have another upright on the outside. So the next setup I want to make is the rest of the cubby holes, and I've got the top ones here. I just need one groove on these ones, so we'll set up that next. I'm going to undo the clamp here. Move it over. Let's undo this one as well. Get a little closer to the place we need to be. And we'll put the one clamp down on this side. Tighten it down. And see if we can hit our mark. And let's clamp this one. And let's cut these. Each one of these have to have paired, so they have to have left and right, so you have to have that as well marked. So these two are made. Let's pair off those, and now let's set up to the next pair. And this is the setup here. We're going to have to move this over just a bit to make this cut. And we'll line up to it. And I think that's where we've got that one. We'll clamp down. Move it around here so I can see. That looks pretty good right there. Let's make the cuts. last setup I have is on the side on this one here has 2 in it. I'll loosen this off. Just move that out just a little bit. Tighten her back up again. And let's find this one here, which is right there. Put the clamp on it. And let's make the cuts. All we need left to do here now is to shape on the outside to clean up this little rough edges. And we're going to use a flush trim bit and a guide to do that. So I'll set the pieces down. Let's take down this setup now, and we'll set up for the flush trim pattern cutting. The fence away now. Let's unplug the router. And take off the insert. We'll just set that aside over here. And we'll change the cutter. That's the first thing we'll do, is set up the cutter. I'm going to use a flush trim, 1/2 inch. Tighten that down. Now let's get a guide. I'm using a 3/4 inch guide. And we'll tighten that on. Roughly set that up to the height we're working with. Tighten it down. Put it back into the fence. And let's bring over a couple of the pieces that we're going to cut. We have a variety of different ones, but we're all using the same fixture here to do that. The molded edges, you want them all to be the same. Again, a fixture is your best bet. And for this first one here, we're just going to slide them in, toggle them down, and let's finish cutting these pieces. Now, you need a place to start, and you need a place to finish. So we're all set to do that. Last operation is to set up the 3/16 round over bit and round over all the edges. So let's get the jig out of the way, and I'll change the bit first. Plug the router. We'll remove the guide. And we'll set the guide away. Set up the 3/16 round over bit, and I'll round over all the pieces. Safety guide pin in place. Plug in the router and round the pieces.
I got a bit chucked up in here, and I got a 3/16 spiral. We're going to use an Easy Link system here for doing this drawer, and I'm going to put the guide in. Let me just put it in place here and show you what I got. Ring that on the inside and tight, and it's a spiral, straight bit inside of it, and it's 3/16, and the guide that I've got in here is 5/16. So that gives us this clearance to run in it, and we'll just take and drop that back down inside of here like that. And I'm just going to bring that cutter up for now, just to there. Let's get the fixture. Well, we got to do a front of a drawer, and we got to do the sides. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the front. Got a little fence in here system to do it. What I need to do is raise that cutter up, and I need to raise the cutter up the thickness of the material that we're going to cut. So we'll lay that's 1/2 inch. We'll pop it in there like that, and lock that into place, and we'll put that back. Now, there's a stop on each side here. There's one on this side, one on here. We got a left and a right. And of course, we got a left and a right drawer. So I put a mark on it, and the mark on here indicates the bottom. And I got this front on it, so we're going to stand that piece up like that. And we need a clamp in here. And we'll take this clamp, we'll clamp it into spot. Give it a good twist in here and tighten it up. And we'll take these hold downs here and lock that fence so it doesn't come up off its pins. And set that into place. And I think this one here could stand a little more tension, so we'll adjust it also. And lock it in. Now this is a very simple system to do. What I'm going to do is work like this so you can see what I'm doing in it. If you're in your workshop, you can turn it this way and run it, and then you can see better what you're doing inside of it. But what it's always doing is all these little notches inside of here, that guide will follow it, and the bit will leave them pockets for it. So let's plug it in. Got the router plugged in. Got it on. Now, let's just tip that up here. It's always a good idea before you take anything apart is to come in here and have a look and see that you got all the routing done in it. Now, if you'll notice on it when I did it in here, we can have a close-up here, right on the edge you'll see a little bit of a groove there. And the groove that I've got in there, what it is this piece was probably a little thicker than 3/4, so it cleans it, but it makes a nice clean line. Now, when you clean these out in it, sometimes you get the debris between the guides, so you got to be careful with that when you're doing it, so you watch that careful. Now, we'll unclamp that. Now, that's on my left. Now, we'll turn it over this side and put it on this side, and we'll continue. What's neat about this fixture thing is that you're not governed to that depth of a drawer because you got index spots in here. You can make it as big as you like. What's nice, you're not up there holding the router trying to see what you're doing. You're working on a flat table. Going to stop that for a second. You see how I come along here? That line I was showing you, that's scoring, and I've scored it now, so when you do it, you won't get any tear out. Okay, now we've got all those links down in the inside there. Now the next operation is to do the drawer sides. So we get our brush here, clean that off. We don't have to change guide or bit. Everything stays there. Just pop these back. We'll take this fence off. It's down, there's 2 pins in here that locate it so you can use different thicknesses. So we get rid of that. Turn the fixture around. One side's for pockets, one's for pins. Now, again, we mark them. Cut this side, put it in here. What we don't know is where we locate it. So we got a little pin in here. It's a setup pin. And this setup pin goes down in there like that. It's got a little notch in it. And you set that up like that, lock that in, pop it up. Now we're going to have to set the height different on here because I had it set up for 1/4 inch fence on it. And just back that off just a little again. Lock it down and pop that into place. Now, that should hold it there. And I think we got it in the right spot. I want to just take it up just in case. You want that just a head right, so if there's anything out of square, it'll even tighten that up for you. So we'll tighten it down. Now when we do that, there's pressure on it. When you're cutting through here, there's pressure on it. I'm going to use a little block here that I've made. Got a little notch in it. Set the notch in here. And we'll back this off inside of here. And what this will do is hold that in there and give us a little bit more support. We'll put it between the pin in there. And I'm going to have to run that down just about as far as it'll go, I guess. That'll be good. Okay, just check that height one more time. Bit's got right through. Let's go. Okay. Now, let's just have a look here. These how these pieces are going together. Now remember we got a solid line, so we need that solid line on that one. And we're going to get that, oh, that's just going to tap in there perfect. Now we got a left and a right, so we'll go back over. We set up the pin again, lock it into this side. Put the end in, lock it down. I'm going to have to adjust my pull downs here a little bit. Lock it in. We'll go to this side this time and we'll lock that into place. We're going to have to adjust this one too. And we'll do the last one. And our next operation is to cut our slot for the back in it. Well, it's still got a little tight in here. Ah, we got it. Sure we got it there. Okay, now we take the pin out, and we're away.
Dad finished cutting the pockets in the sides, then set up and cut a 1/2 inch dado for the back to fit into. After cutting the 1/4 inch slot for the drawer bottom, he ran into a problem with the small drawer parts.
Here's my problem. My pieces in here are very narrow. And if you can have a look in here, I got a gap in here for the bit to run. Sometimes you have a tendency to run into it. So rather than use that fence in it, I'll just use a block in here. And then I can swing that block inside of it. So we might have to go to a little different kind of clamp in here. And we'll tighten that clamp down. Bring that inside of it. We need some power. Now, what we're going to do here, we got a couple of fronts, and we got a couple of backs, but we need some sides to go in it. And how far do they need to go in? So right on the sharpness of that bit in here, we need to go in there about 3/8. But one thing about this, we got the alteration on the side too. So I'm just going to tap that out there, and I'll probably going about 5/16 probably. That should be good, and I'll show you how it comes out. We get our little push stick here, and again we got our drawer fronts. So let's start up here. Hopefully you can see that dovetail. There's the dovetail. Now what we're going to do, we're going to take these sides and just put a dovetail slot back in it. So I'm going to have to move that clamp over just a little, close that up here. We don't need the bit quite as deep. Let's bring that in here like that. This is kind of a guess game now to make sure that it comes out about right. And I think maybe that's going to be just fine in it. Okay. Whoop. Too much of a little bit. Before I run all them out, let's have a look at what I got. There's the front, there's the side, and there's the locket we get on it. So it locks right in there snug and comes there reasonably close. If you're back a little, it helps because you've got to have clearance going into the hole that you've left for it anyway. So let's just lay that front down, and we'll get the rest of our sides here. And we got to have 4 of them, so we got that. We're not concerned with right or lefts yet, so.
After cutting the half dovetail pins in the cubbyhole drawers, Dad set up and cut a 3/16 dado for the drawer bottoms.
There's the 3/16 groove. Now we got to go to the sides. What we're going to do with the sides is we're going to lay them in pairs. We got the fronts and backs together, and we'll lay the fronts and the backs back here, and then we can just pair them up as we cut them.
Now it's time for Tips from the Workshop, Viewer Mail, and Tricks of the Trade on router bits, tips, and wood chips.
Tip for this time is making the fixture for your hinges. Now this particular hinge here is a double action hinge, and how we made the fixture was we used the piece here to cut out the 1/4 inch. You notice the distance around the outside, the router goes around and makes the fixture for us. Now the trick to this one is there's 2 depths on it. If you look at it, we have a height here to deal with, and we have the full hinge that we have to mount. The first cut was done following the 7/8 1/4 inch bit and cutting around the outside edge. To get this slot here in place in the right position, what we've done is we've made little shim pieces that fit inside using the same guide and the same bit, and they slide in place here and line up where they're supposed to be, and that makes the slot to change the depth here in the piece that we're working with. The last one we want to look at is the one for the pull. Now when we pull the pull over in place, we've got to have the depth of the cutter set up. So to do that, we've used the back side of the piece here and use it to make the guide and put it in place. The trick here is making sure that we found the center. Now the size of the fixture is the full width of the piece, and find the center of the piece that we're cutting. We're using a 3/8 here and a 3/4. Now the other thing you want to look at is when you do these fixtures is that you have it marked out what bit you're using and which guide you're using.
I got the drawer together without the bottom, but I'll just set this aside because Rick's coming. Here.
All right.
You just about got
I've got
that
all my
whole thing
pieces
together
set up
here.
here.
I'm going to let you take this piece. Oh, these little things in it.
Yep.
They are a pain, aren't they?
This drawer fits in here.
And we got the pieces for the other one.
Slides in. You get your side up there.
Oh, I can hold it up there. Yeah, there's 2 places.
This
to
takes
screw.
about as much time Welcome to the Router Workshop, and this is the fourth part to our secretary desk, and this is the bookcase part. Dad, what do you got going today?
Well, I'm going to make up the box work, the case work of it, and I've got the mortise and tenon facings.
All right, and I'm going to work on the top moldings and the door. And we've got a really interesting hinge here that we've got today, and it comes off. I'll take it off and show it to you. And then let's see how we can get it back on here. And I'm going to go get those parts started already.
Fantastic.
All right, the first operation we're going to do is make the top moldings. And what we're going to use is we're going to use a round over bit and a cove bit. The fence I'm using is the one that I use for raised panels as well. And if I can take off the pins for it. The pins line up on the outside for the raised panel system, which has given us a 1/2-inch bearing off the top. Most of the larger bits carry that same bearing, which is this one here, which is a round over bit. Because we're doing long moldings, there shouldn't be a problem with the base being a little bit wider. I'm going to put the clamps on first. We'll clamp down the outfeed part of the piece first. And let's clamp down the infeed side as well. And we'll bring over our moldings to see how we're doing here. I'm going to take one here just to check to make sure that we've got the bearing isolated, and it is. The next thing we need to do is get on our safety gear here, which is our ear protection and our eyes. And one more thing I need is the push stick. If you look at the push stick, it's got the stick in the middle, tight in place, keeps it tight to the fence. And let's plug it in and cut it. Now that we've got the roundovers done, the next operation is to cut the cove. So I'm going to stop the machine, change the bit, and set up for the cove cut. So let's unplug it, clear off a little bit of this dirt. Set that aside. And we'll move off the fence. And we'll change to the next cutter. The cutter I'm using here is going to be a Cove. So we'll load that up in place. Tighten it down. And I'll raise that up to, again, this is personal preference, but about 1/2-3/4 of an inch there, 1/2 inch actually. And the depth is set. Back down. Again, get our pins in the right place. Put our fence back on. It should be in exactly the same position as the roundover one so that our moldings will be right. And we'll slip on the back, the outfeed clamp and the infeed. Let's bring our push stick back. And let's cut our pieces for our cove. And we'll plug it in. And let's make the cuts. Let's bring over our pieces here. There's our cove that we've just finished. Here's our roundover that we're just finished prior to that. We'll line those up and set it up And there's our stacked molding already set for the top of the cabinet. The next operation we have to do is make the coping beads on the doors, for the doors. So let's dust this off a bit. And we're going to change the cutter to a coping bead, which makes the stiles and rails to match. And of course, this hasn't got a panel in it. It's going to have glass in it, so it's a little different. So we'll unplug the router, and let's change the cutter. Put this in first, and then we'll show you what the first cut's going to be. Clamp that down, make sure she's locked in place. And we'll just roughly raise the cutter up. The first cut's going to be on the bottom part of this cutter here, which is this part in here, from this top edge here down. And I need to set it up in height. I have to have it in the fence, or in the base with the fence on it. So we'll bring the fence in. Now when we were cutting the moldings, we were this way. We're going to switch it around now. Get it switched around in place. And line it up back inside the pin so it gives a distance away for the cutter for us. When we clamp it down, what it's doing right now is positioning this surface so it puts it in the right place. And we always cut with face side down. So the first operation is to set the height up. And where I'm looking here is, lock that down in place. I get my pencil here. I like to have it so that I have just a small 1/8 of an inch or so on the bottom from this edge, from this surface here to the bottom part of the cutter. And I think I'm pretty close right now. So let's bring over the pieces that need to be cut. We have 4 pieces for our rails, and we have 4 pieces for our stiles. So let's figure out what our face sides are. I always like to put an X on the face side when we're marking or working with our pieces. That way you know you've got the piece that's best down. Mark those. Let's bring the 4 pieces for our stiles be over. And that one looks like our best one. Yeah, that's pretty good there. And we'll keep this on the face. And this is sort of questionable, but we'll mark that one. All right, now that we've got all the face sides marked, let's just take the pieces that need the cope cuts first, which is these ones here. And we're going to cut the cope on the ends. That's the first operation. To do that, we're going to get ourselves a fixture here for doing those. And we lock them into place, keeping the X side down. And let's cut the pieces. All right, now that we've got the cope cuts finished, we have the top part and the bottom. What we need to do is match the bead on this cutter, which is on the top, so that when the two come together, they match perfectly. So I'm going to unplug the router first before we set it up. We're going to turn or rotate the bit. Let me set it up first, and then what we'll do is we'll show it to you. And bring it down. It's always better when you're setting up to come down on a piece than to try and go down and come up. And let's just see. What I'm trying to do is get this top cutter here, this edge here, to match the piece. Now the perfect place to check that is right here on this edge. So let's plug it in and cut it. got that a feather edge. It's really close. We're just going to leave that. That looks close enough to be for me. So we'll move these pieces apart. And let's cut all the rails first. Bring the push stick over, and let's make our cuts.
What I've got to do here is I've got a dado to cut in the bottom, and I got a rabbet to cut at the top. And these are the case sides of that bookcase. What I've got set up in here is I got a 3/4 inch bit, and I've got the depth of it set, half the thickness of plywood, 3/8, and the fence set ready to go. So all we have to do is go down in here and run them. And anytime you're running dados in, people, you run across the grain first, so if you've got anything rabbeting from the back or whatever, you do that last with the grain. Once I get these two cuts, then we'll switch around and pick up the rabbet on it. So we'll just set that up here. I got it plugged in. We'll turn it on, and we're ready to go. Now, we just need a 3/4 inch rabbet in it, so we need to bring the fence up to the cutter, just upside here. I'm going to loosen that down just a bit, just like that. And we'll tighten that down. And now we'll reverse the ends on it. Now what we have to do is accommodate the shelves in the bookcase. And the shelves that we're going to use are going to be adjustable, and we're using a shelf rest system in it. So there's all kinds of methods to do that with. The one that I like to use in here is a series of holes, and lots of times you see you maybe use a drill to do these with, but it's nicer to use a guide and a router because you plunge the bit in, it'll be square, and you're not ratting the holes out of your template in here. So, got bottom marked on here. Don't get something you reverse in it. And we have both sides to do. We'll tap a tack in that one, and tap a tack in the top one. Now, let's look at the router that we're going to use for that. When I set up in here, I've got a 1-inch guide. The 1-inch guide in there will fit right down inside of here, and we're using a 1/4 inch bit. Now, that 1/4 inch bit will make the 1/4 inch hole to hold the shelf rest. So, I think I'm going to do is just take and clamp this thing down just a little bit here so it doesn't get away on me. Clamp out of here. Not going to skid too much, so we'll just pop it in like that. Now, set it in one of those holes, and let's set the depth on it. So we'll pop it down like that. Now it's at 0. And I think we need to do is go about a 1/4 inch down. So we'll go back here to the pole stop, and we'll unlock it, and then we got a little elevating piece inside of here, and maybe get my hand around here so you can see a little better, and I'll drop it down. That little brass block makes a space between the pole stop and the base, so we'll lock it in here, and that's how deep we need to go. Okay, now what we'll also need to do is get some power. We'll bring that up there so it's not in contact with anything. Swing it around here, and plug it in. Okay, get my cord twisted here out of my way. See if I'm on the right line.
After routing the holes for the shelves, Dad set up a slot cutter and began cutting the tenons for the face frames.
Notice that my fixture here is not held in any direction, but however, when the rotation of the bit, it will suck it in there. Now, we've got to do is get these little edges, the haunches off of it, and the reason for that is that you can't mortise right out to the end of your stick. So now we'll turn it away. We got a little ball catch in here, put this down out of it, and what's our guard in here when we come across with the side of it in here? It's a safety precaution. Now, let's just have a look at what we've done in here. There's the two haunches cut out, and there's the tenon that goes inside. You can't find an easier way or better way to cut that, and you got this control, and that's important. Let's set those aside now, and we'll just take this operation down here. I want to show you those two clips that we have here, the little pins in the bottom. Hardest thing with your router to do, people, is set the height of the bit and a location of a fence. And on the end in here, we got two pins go into two holes, and that controls that depth all the time, and it's exactly the same thing for it. We'll just set this aside. We'll unplug it, and we're just going to drop that down. Cutter's out of the way. I unplugged the router. Now let's go to a different fixture. We've got to do the mortising now. The mortise fixture that I have here, and I'm going to tip it up a little bit so you can see, I've already locked this piece in. See this piece at the end? That's just a filler in it, and it's going to be a filler that we butt up to. And between those two lines in it is where we've got to cut the mortise. And we're going to cut a 1/4-inch slot in here with a 1/4-inch spiral bit. We got wedges driven in. This is a shop-made fixture. You'd be surprised how many things you can use it for besides mortising and things. It holds things in place. These two outside pieces is what the base plate will ride on, and you'll see in a minute here. And we also got wedges in here to lock the piece in. Now, I'm going to set it up like that, and I'll see if I can get a clamp on either side. And we'll be going here in just a second. Take and lock that down. Just hold that in place. Might have to turn that just a shade there to get my clamp on, but I think we can do that. Lock that in. And let's see here. This other clamp may be over on this side. A little easier to think. I want to run it just like that so I get room to tighten my clamp on. Only thing to slip away on you when you're in here. And let's go to the router. Just pop this down for a second in here and let you have a look at the bit in it. There is no guide in here. We just got a bit. But we have two new additional things. We got two little bearings on here. And those two bearings in here will ride on either side, one on opposite side. I see they're loose in here, so I'm going to just have to take a second here and just tighten those up. Got little lock washers on them, but sometimes they will just vibrate loose on us, I guess. We'll just take and tighten them down. And got a spacer in it, but the bearing is free to roll. Now, here's what happens. I'm going to stand this up, and what's going to happen is we're going to get one on either side. So I'm going to get one on either side, just to put the bit up, and one roller's on one side and one on the other. And then what you do is you plunge and you pull on here, and you cut a straight slot. The idea is, it's just an old math thing in here, that we got a bit, we have a bit and a bearing, and they're all centered. And the distance between each is centered, so then it automatically centers on any thickness of material that you can reach between. So it's just that third point. So we'll put it in there like that, pop it down, and lock it. Now, I'm going to set that bit down right on the wood, and I'm going to lock it. Now, what we have to do is determine the depth of it. So we want to go down deep enough in here to get that tenon thing. So what we're going to do is set up in here. We're going to go down 3/4 of an inch. So we'll pop this back, we'll raise the pole stop up and set that down. We got a 1/2 inch, and I got a 3/8. So I'm actually 7/8, and that's exactly what my tenon is in it. So we got that 7/8 inches in it. We'll lock it in there tight. Take those out. Put them back in their holder so we know where they are for next time. Now, I probably won't go down that full slot when I do it. I'll put some pressure on this twist, pop in here, come back, probably do it a couple of times. Reason I'm doing it, get rid of the chip load. The chips get involved in there and you'll have to be able to get them out, so that helps. Okay, switch in and off position. Need some power. Got power. Let's do it. Now. Now, you could work a system where you could put stops on it if you wish, but it's so open in there you can really see what you're doing. And you don't have that problem to set it up in it. Now we put that in here. My wedge in here needs a little adjusting too. And then we'll put that wedge back in. And the last wedge. Tap them down flush. Remember, the router's riding on these outside edges. If you were just on that 3/4 inch board, then you're kind of obligated to balance it. This way you don't have to do that. Now, always got to shake the debris out of it. Bring one of our tenon pieces over here and lift them inside of here and see what it'll do. It'll come out exactly flush. Sometimes what you might want to do is just round those off, because what we've ended up with, we got round corners from the bit in there. Really doesn't matter. You got lots of room for it. Glue it up. Be careful when you put glue in. If you put too much in it and then you squeeze it with a clamp, you can bulge it out and break it in here because you get pressure inside of it.
Now it's time for Tips from the Workshop, Viewer Mail, and Tricks of the Trade on router bits, tips, and wood chips.
The tip this time is to cut the rabbet out for your glass on your doors. And to do that, we're going to use a 3/8 rabbeting bit. Now the trick is that you've got the bearing set up just on the edge of your pieces cutting. And that's on this molded edge that we have on the side here. And the bearing will fit right along that edge, so you've got to get the height set up right. And you make sure that you've got them glued together properly before you start cutting. Well, I got my two pieces here rough fit together. How are you doing?
I tacked this thing together here. It's dry fit, so we know before we get the glue. Now the facing in here, we got it the same way, so we got to be a little bit careful with it in it. We'll put that
one side down here. And
yeah, just kind of hold that together.
All right.
Now, what should we show next? The molding at the top? And then
well, I've got the two moldings that I've put together. We haven't put on the 45s yet.
Oh, great.
We'll be able to let you see
what
what happens
there a
here.
Bit.
Get it hanging over.
You
You can
good.
pretty much hang it one way or the other, eh?
Yeah,
looks good.
I got the molding.
All right, and the last piece we have here is the doors. We just have the hinges and things in place.
You didn't cut out the back yet for the glass, is that right?
That's it.
We'd like to hear